Hi, this is Amanda DeHaven, and today I'm going to talk to you about the potential use of fasting and fasting-mimicking diets in type 1 diabetes treatments. This information was taken from Fasting-Mimicking Diet Promotes NGN3-Driven Beta Cell Regeneration to Reverse Diabetes by Cheng et al. That was published in 2007 in Cell. The journal Cell has an impactor of 36.216, which is very high. So some background information. Beta cells in your pancreas create insulin. Insulin is what allows glucose to enter your cells. Glucose is the energy source of your cells, so no insulin means no energy, means death if you don't have any treatment. In type 1 diabetes, beta cells either produce none or very little insulin, which is a problem. Beta cells are among the most sensitive cells to nutrient availability in the body. Since fasting is reducing nutrient availability, intermittent fasting and other fasting mimicking diets are becoming very popular for weight loss and health reasons, and there's been a lot of research in recent years into fasting. When you fast, tissues and organs atrophy. When the fast is broken, these tissues and organs are regenerated using stem cells. Fasting is actually an evolutionary adaptation, so most organisms don't have refrigerators or McDonald's. They need to be able to survive times without food, and being able to survive fasting situations is an advantage. Current treatments for type 1 diabetes is blood glucose monitoring and insulin injections. This can be very expensive and also difficult for juveniles, which is when type 1 diabetics are usually diagnosed. Regenerating viable beta cells could be a more permanent treatment of diabetes. So the hypothesis of the Cheng et al. Paper was that because the beta cells that create insulin are some of the most sensitive cells to nutrient availability and fasting mimicking diets have been shown to promote regeneration of different tissues, a fasting mimicking diet will increase beta cell function and insulin secretion in mice with depleted beta cells. So that depletion of beta cells would mimic a type 1 diabetic. And the objectives that related to the topics I'm talking about today are determining the effects of fasting mimicking diets on beta cell regeneration and insulin production, and developing different treatments for type 1 diabetes. So I looked at two different figures from this paper. This first one showing the blood glucose level versus the time after STZ injection. This STZ injection was a high-dose streptozotocin treatment that caused the depletion of beta cells. This was used to mimic a type 1 diabetic where their beta cells do not produce insulin. After this STZ treatment, some of the mice were fed regular diet, which is the control, so this dark dots. Some of the mice were fed cycles of fasting mimicking diets, which were low calorie, low sugar, low protein, high fat diets with these white dots here. And you can see there is a difference. The control or the non-fasting mice have the same initial reaction, initial spike in their blood glucose levels, but the non-fasting mice continue to keep very high, dangerous levels of blood glucose, while the fasting mice have a drastic decrease as the cycles of fasting and non-fasting go on, until about day 60, where their blood glucose levels are down to almost normal. This second figure shows a glucose tolerance test taken on the 60th day post-STZ treatment. It shows the difference between the glucose tolerance testing for the control and the fasting mice. Glucose tolerance testing, they injected glucose into the mice, and if they had working insulin, so working beta cells, that glucose would be transported into the cells. If they did not have insulin, that glucose would stay in the blood, and that's what happened with the control. You can see they had a higher resting blood glucose level, and with the injection, the blood glucose spiked even higher and stayed high. With the fasting mice, the blood glucose spiked, as it would if you inject anything with glucose, but then the glucose was taken into the cells, as you can see by this drop. This is similar to a non-diabetic or a mouse that has beta cells that are working. It's still a little high at the 200 level, but it's a vast improvement over the control. So, some discussions and conclusions. This low protein, low sugar, low calorie fasting diet caused a temporary reduction in B cell number during the fast, followed by an increase in the B cell number and activity after refeeding. This suggests that the fasting diet may have the capacity to regenerate defective beta cells in type 1 diabetics and regain glucose homeostasis, which could potentially treat or cure type 1 diabetes, not just in mice, but in humans. So the next step, in my opinion, should be to definitely develop clinical trials to test fasting mimicking diets on human type 1 diabetes to see if a diet control could help treat or cure type 1 diabetes. I took information from these 3 sources, and thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.